Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology, and today I'm going to be talking about Jupiter going into Pisces. So Jupiter goes into Pisces on December 28th of 2021, today, and it's going to signal a big shift. I think we've had a really intense holiday season so far. Just in terms of transits, I know I've been hearing from a lot of you. Some of them are hitting you guys really hard. Some of them maybe not so hard. Some of you guys are kind of getting out of it. And this is going to be one of the lighter ones. And this is going to be one of the transits that extends deep into 2022 and is one of the kind of main stories of 2022 is Jupiter in Pisces. And so I'm going to break that down for each rising sign and show you where in your chart it's showing up and what might be likely to happen. Now, Jupiter doesn't just spend 2022 in Pisces. He's also going to move through into the first 8 degrees of Aries and station retrograde there this summer. So we will get Jupiter in Pisces from December 28th to May 10th, and then October 27th to December 20th. So we get kind of 2 pockets in there. Just like if you remember from last year, we had Jupiter mostly in Aquarius with a few months of Jupiter in Pisces over the summer. So this is all good news because really what has been happening over the last 2 years is Jupiter in Saturn's 2 signs. So Jupiter spent 2020 in Capricorn. We all kind of know how that went, trying to make the best of a bad situation, but being really bogged down by the presence of Saturn and Pluto and making difficult things bigger, right? Like pandemics. Then we had Jupiter in Aquarius, where it's a little bit more solution focused, not quite as debilitated as it is in Capricorn, but still with Saturn and working under a lot of constrictions and a lot of limitations. So Jupiter's move into Pisces is the first time we've had Jupiter in its own sign since 2019 when it was in Sagittarius. So Sag and Pisces are the 2 signs that Jupiter rules. And so we get a good Jupiter. And I think for those of you that are Jupiterians, so Piscean, Sun, Moon, Rising, Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, Rising, this is going to feel really significant. We also have Jupiter, the greater benefic, doing his job to kind of buoy us, but finally from an empowered place where that can actually happen. So that is enough of me talking in the introduction. I'm going to pull up the chart and we can watch Jupiter move through the signs to see what is likely to happen with your experience. So we're going to start with Leo Rising because for my location here on the West Coast, the moment that Jupiter goes into Pisces, you can see Jupiter right here at 00 Pisces at 8:10 p.m. on tonight, December 28th. It's a Leo Rising chart. So for Leo Risings, the past year has really been about trying to make the best in relationships that are having some kind of like coming of age, like they need to grow up, they need to mature. And so Jupiter's been doing its best to mediate with Saturn moving through your 7th house for the past year. Jupiter moving into Pisces is going to allow for the deep intimacy that that's really the lifeblood of those connections. And so it's opening up the floodgates. And so there might be some tears, but right, we're kind of, when Jupiter moves into a water sign, we're getting this kind of resaturation of things that have been dry and prickly and brittle. And so there's kind of lifeblood in that area again. So Jupiter will be in your 8th house until May when it moves into your 9th house of Aries, this kind of impulsive desire to make moves, having a lot more energy to do that and kind of start planning for the future or traveling or connecting with your educational goals. So maybe starting a new program or deciding that it's the right time to start moving towards that. And then Jupiter will move back and kind of dip back into the 8th house, into that intimate space. It's a great time while Jupiter is in your 8th house to kind of let yourself connect with those things that maybe you're interested in, but you are afraid of what other people might think of you. If you're interested in them, the 8th house is the place of taboos, like witchcraft, like astrology, like anything in the occult. And Jupiter, kind of the benefic teacher of the zodiac, spending time there is really highlighting that area for you. Okay, let's move on and do Virgo risings. So for Virgo risings, Jupiter is moving into your 7th house of relationships. And so this is really nice because if you've been struggling with relationships for the past 2 years, finally, Jupiter is kind of bringing some more juiciness to that, right? Bringing, as I've been saying, this kind of lifeblood, this faith, this optimism, this ability to kind of let go and surrender to the process and believe it's going to be a good process. So I think that this is a healing transit for Virgo risings. It's also connected to your 4th house because Jupiter rules your 4th house of Sagittarius. So there's also the potential to kind of reassess and reestablish your relationships with your family from a more helpful, more hopeful place. You might find yourself moving again now that Jupiter has some power. I think the important thing here, and this is what I always say to Virgo risings, is you really need to have boundaries in your relationships. Having Pisces in the 7th house can contribute to relationships taking too much from you. And we can definitely run into that with Jupiter that's prone to saying yes in the 7th. So I would just watch out for that. Once it hits your 8th house, when it goes into Aries, that'll be kind of deepening this connection and feeling ready to kind of share and really start something with someone, possibly. I guess the final thing for Virgo risings is that, and this will be true for all of the mutable signs rising, so Virgo, Gemini, Pisces, or Sag, Jupiter is moving into an angular house. So this is one of the better transits for you. And you should look for that improvement around stabilizing your living situation and harmonizing your relationships. Let's move on to Libra. Okay, so for Libra risings, Jupiter comes back into your 6th house and kind of buoys your health from there. So I think this, how hard to be a Libra rising during the pandemic and have to isolate and be kind of cut off from your connections with other people. And Jupiter moving into your 6th house will kind of bring that connection back, bring back some kind of health for your body, and then also improve your Sagittarius house, which is the house of your relationships with your neighborhood and your familiar environment. And finally, there's this kind of freedom to move about in that space in a better way. Yeah, you might find that you can make progress at work as well a lot better. The 6th house being the place of kind of the daily grind, and Jupiter is kind of giving more energy and more saturation and more kind of buoyancy to that place. So you should be feeling like there should be kind of this uptick of physical health and of your connection with, the people that you see every day. Okay, Scorpio risings, Jupiter is moving into your 5th house. So fun. So this is another one that is having a really good transit with this. We've got Jupiter out of the 4th house, the kind of heavy rationalism of the home, and into the juicy 5th house of fun and play and pleasure. And so it's like, you've been really working to establish yourself, find your place, build up your sense of foundation. And Jupiter moving into the fifth kind of allows you to expand into your creativity and kind of move out of the harder tasks of that space into more of the fun stuff. This should also see an improvement in your finances because they rule your second house, and Jupiter is the ruler there too. So, right, you're connecting with your creativity. And then what do we know about that? Well, when the energy starts flowing a little bit more easily and we are in this place of play and flow, that helps us just generate resources. So that is a really nice transit for you as well. When it moves into the sixth house, that should be giving you more energy, more physical energy, a little bit of a boost. And yeah, to kind of make progress in that space in your life. Okay, now we go to another one of these mutable signs, Sagittarius Rising, Jupiter moving into the fourth. This, I think, is a really, really beautiful transit. You have the ruler of your chart moving into the fourth house of family, history, foundation, legacy in the sense of your ancestors and your connection to them. And there's this way, I can see this story with the pandemic of not being able to be super close to family or going home very much. And Jupiter moving into the fourth allows for more of that, allows for more of the connection. And the sense of home being a bright and safe place. And that expands your sense of self and gives you more confidence because you're supported by this foundation. So a great transit for both expanding yourself after your chart ruler has been in Saturn signs, struggling with finances, struggling with connections for the past 2 years, and now kind of bringing you into this place of grace. So totally beautiful for Sagittarius risings. Okay, Capricorn risings. Jupiter is moving out of your second into your third, and right, it's kind of reinvigorating those connections in that place of the third house. Suddenly you kind of have the energy and the faith in that what you have to say is of value, and you can start sharing it again. I know you guys take yourselves really seriously, and it can be quite heavy to be a Capricorn rising, but there's some kind of juiciness returning. Now, Jupiter also rules your 12th house of kind of the place of deepen your isolation, your connection with God. And so you've been struggling either with your mental health or with your faith or with your beliefs. Jupiter is in a better position to kind of reconnect you to that sense of source and that sense of meaning and purpose and belonging, even if as a Capricorn rising, you think that sometimes you can or should go without. Aquarius risings, Jupiter moves into your second house. And so the kind of bummer for Aquarius risings is that Jupiter has been in your first house, kind of helping mediate the kind of contracting effects of Saturn. And so what you lose as an Aquarius rising is you lose that kind of buoyancy from your first house, but it goes into your second house. So hopefully you're finding the ability to kind of receive support from your personal resources, to generate personal resources. Jupiter also rules your 11th house of community and friendship and hope and ideals, and it has been in these really harsh places for the last 2 years. So there's a big improvement coming in that area too. Hopefully you're going to feel that in the 11th house, this feeling of connection with like-minded people, and your ability to be part of something that you believe in. And right, as you participate in that, that is hopefully also reflected in the sense of the resources you have at your disposal. think Pisces is always a funny sign to have in the second house, as the place of kind of concrete resources, because Pisces is largely so easy come, easy go. And so that sense of being able to have what you need when you need it, I think is going to come back for Aquarius risings. And I think you're going to need it because Saturn is still moving through your first house. So best of luck with that. When Jupiter moves into your third house, I think there'll be a little bit more communication, a little bit more assertion. You'll kind of, right? It's a little bit of a act local, right? It's a little bit of, connecting, making friends, really participating in your local community a little bit more. And I think that will make a lot of sense because it happens in May. And so the weather will be nice and nicer in the Northern Hemisphere. And so we'll all kind of be outside a lot more than maybe when we're focused on our physical resources during the winter. Okay, Pisces rising. This is a great, great transit for you. And I had actually been seeing a lot of Pisces risings in readings and just wanting to assure them, like, if you've been struggling, the help is coming, this buoyancy, this help of Jupiter returning, your chart ruler returning to the sign of your ascendant for the first time in 12 years, bringing this sense of expansion of all that you could be. Now, right, Jupiter, as the ruler of Sagittarius, also rules your 10th house of kind of the stuff that you really want to do with your life and how you want to appear and participate and what you want your legacy to be. And Jupiter is, right, is in coming in and giving you support in the first house areas of self-concept and how you experience yourself. It's kind of like the magic all comes back and you're inspired again. And there's a sense of hopefulness again. And so I think this transit will be really good for feeling like you come back to yourself and you get to move forward again. When Jupiter moves into Aries, you might see some of the financial reward of that. So if you're putting yourself out there in this kind of 10th house way by just really being true to yourself and clear with yourself, then I think you will see those kind of financial rewards happen when Jupiter moves into your second house. Now, the other thing about Jupiter in the second house is that sometimes it just means that you want to buy nicer stuff, like you need to upgrade a bunch of stuff. And so it can also mean spending a lot of money. So there's kind of, right, it's a double-edged sword there. Okay, then Aries rising, we have Jupiter moving into your 12th. And Jupiter in the 12th, I find to be such a magical placement because help comes from these very unexpected places where you would never look for it. The kind of, I see Jupiter in the 12th as needing to spend kind of time alone because there are voices either from deep within yourself or from other realms that are communicating to you that you cannot hear except for in this kind of quality alone time. It's kind of restoring the faith that you might have. It also rules your 9th house of kind of your sense of guiding principles and long-term planning. And so I think Jupiter moving into your 12th house will, it's asking you to move very intuitively through those things to find your way. When it moves into your first house, I think you'll have all of the confidence of having these deep relationships with otherworldly ideas and beings. And they will kind of erupt out of you with your Aryan confidence and sense of purpose. Oops. Okay, Taurus rising. Taurus rising sees Jupiter move into the 11th, and I think that this is really wonderful. Jupiter has been working on your belief systems, on your career, laboring under the constraints of Saturn, and moves into the 11th house of friendship and connection. It also rules your 8th house of deep intimacy, of taboo. And there's this way in which it feels so fertile, this transit. You're coming back to your community, hopefully coming out of quarantine, ready to engage with people in a new way than you have been before, in a deeper way than you have before. And yeah, there's a lot of kind of the 11th house is the place of wishes because it's rising up towards the 10th house. There's this aspirational, idealistic, what do I want to become sense of the 11th house, and having the kind of fecundity of Jupiter come back into that place, I think will help you find the support in a journey that you've really been laboring over largely alone. So that'll be really fun. Okay, Gemini Rising. This is another one of these really good ones, right? We've got the mutable signs, which means that Jupiter rules 2 angular houses for Gemini Risings. That's the 7th and the 10th. So Jupiter is as the ruler of your relationships and kind of your big, like your career or your sense of meaning and purpose and what you really want to do with your life, is getting out from under the confines of Saturn and kind of stepping into his own. And so having this kind of faith and belief that what you're trying to do is the right thing, even if you don't understand all of the steps to get there. And coming back to that Piscean faith, that if you have the right care and the right ideas of where you're trying to go, that kind of the world will conspire to get you there. And if your relationships have been teetering, you've had eclipses in your relationship house for the past couple of years, right? This is a kind of restorative time where they come into more faith and ease and grace. And there is a sense of expansiveness, both for your partner and for yourself. And that's really lovely. And finally, we have Cancer risings. And Jupiter moves into the 9th house. And in the 9th house, Jupiter can bring these kind of bring your core principles into being. There is a sense of maybe returning to studies that you've been putting off, returning to travel, this kind of resaturation of your relationship with the divine and with the holy order of the universe. Jupiter is the exaltation ruler of Cancer, so significant in your chart too. And so that will be really kind of Jupiter shoring up all of your knowledge in a certain area. And then when Jupiter moves into your 10th house of Aries, right, you might see more opportunities in terms of what's possible for you to do with your career or wherever you dedicate kind of the largest amount of your life energy and what you want to be known for. And so there is this kind of like, okay, recognize what you don't know, expand, repair, connect, travel, be re-inspired by the project of life. And then when Jupiter moves into Aries, you may have some of the opportunities to kind of grab onto that. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of walk through Jupiter's transit of each of the rising signs. If you liked this video, please like it. Please share it and subscribe to my channel if you know of anyone else that might be interested or resonate with this. And I wish you all the kind of grace and relief of Jupiter in Pisces. I will be back in a couple days with your new moon video. Meanwhile, very happy new year to you all.